Rory Steyn, I'm looking forward to having a fireside chat with you in the Berg at the what we call BNC3. It's our third BizNews Conference, and it's a different format. We're going to be talking about you. So I suppose let's have a little bit of an appetizer for those who are coming to the conference and those who can't come, sadly for them. The topic of the talk is your time as Madiba's bodyguard.
Right. So first of all, thanks, Alec. I'm delighted that bartering is still alive and well in Africa and in South Africa, because you'll recall that I said to you, look, I'd love to attend the conference. So in lieu of the fee, let's see if we can work something out. And we have. And I'm looking even more forward to it than you are, because it's just got such a wonderful reputation, great location. And I'm very happy to tell my story.
Have you been there before?
I have. We stayed there for about 3 nights years ago, played a bit of golf there. And it's just a great setting, isn't it? I mean, anywhere in the Berg's a great setting, right?
Drakensberg Sports Resort's golf course has now been upgraded to the 26th best in South Africa. And given how many golf courses we've got here, that's a very high rating.
Absolutely. I mean, even top 100 is going to be a proper track. Yeah.
So what are you going to be telling us?
Well, essentially, people love to hear the stories about the privilege that I had to serve Madiba for the 5 years that he was our president. How that came about, meeting him for the first time, especially given the fact that not only was I a white cop, but I also came from a security branch background. So Nelson Mandela and Rory Steyn should really have been mortal enemies. And yet he accepted me, and not only did he accept me, he rebuffed an attempt, I guess you would call it, because when the intelligence services discovered that this young team leader who is assigned to the president, has the background that I had, they went to him and said, listen, you need to get rid of this guy. And that would have been the simplest thing for him to say, yeah, okay. There would have been 100 other guys in the queue, equally as qualified as I was, Alec. And he said, no. He said, you leave that boy there. He's done a good job and he's proved himself. And he later said to me that in any case, we are not looking for people who are carrying out instructions, in the old days, in the old system, and everything that the security police were known for. He said, we want the people that were giving those instructions. And I mean, it was an incredible, it was a real light bulb moment for me, Alec, because what it said was that I was employed to do a job, and that job demanded loyalty to my president, to the head of state. But long before I was called on to be loyal to him, he was loyal to me. He didn't have to do that. As I said, he could have just said, yeah, okay, move on.
It's incredible. I was actually thinking about our conversation this morning and remembering I met him twice. And in both times, he said, it's an honor and a privilege to meet you. I'm sure he did that with everybody.
That's who he
shook
was.
His hand, this tall man.
Yes.
With just such a presence. Now, I remember those, and I will remember that until my dying day. And you spent 5 years.
5 years.
With this icon. Okay, so lots of people saying, yeah, we've made him into something bigger than he was. What's your thought on that?
Well, I'm biased, but I think that even compared to a Gandhi or a Churchill, to me, he is the human being of the 21st century,
That's extraordinary, because this is a guy that you spent 5 years very, very close to.
Yes.
So you would have seen his flaws, you would have seen the ups and downs, and you still say that?
Absolutely. And Alec, that I because I'm asked that question quite often, and what I can say is that I watched him, because of this position I was in, I watched him from an up-close and personal perspective change the country, but he also changed me very profoundly. Because when I came into that job, if you pause the movie at 94 and roll it back to 1990, when I was actually actively serving in the church's section of the security branch at John Vorster Square, when FW made that historic announcement, there was probably a TV on in the tea room or something like that, and we weren't really paying attention. I mean, who listens to politicians, right, when you're a cop? And then the next thing he says, he is going to release Mr. Mandela unconditionally and unban all the banned political organizations. I mean, we know the import of that statement. But when he signed it into law, we as the security branch had no more work because the illegal people and illegal organizations that we were focused on were now legal. So when this 9 days later now, on the 11th of February, President Mandela is released from Victor Verster. He goes to the Grand Parade in Cape Town to make his first speech as a free man, and the world's media are literally there hanging off every word because we didn't even know what he looked like, remember?
That's right.
It was illegal to publish a photograph of him or anything that he said. So what is he going to say? He goes to the Grand Parade. He says a lot of things, but one of the tenets of what he said was quoting from the Freedom Charter, where he said, South Africa is for all her people, both black and white. And this cynical cop sitting in his office in John Vorster is going, whatever. Of course you're going to say that. That's the party line. You know, we were instructed and trained in what the ideology of the ANC was, because that's Warfare 101 is know your enemy's strategy or his philosophy. And I just poo-pooed all that. So that's 1990.
So you thought that was PR?
I just thought that was PR. Of course you're going to say that. It's the party line. 4 years later, I get to meet him, and not just meet him, I get to work with him and to serve in this particular capacity. And all of a sudden, I saw that none of that stuff that he was saying, like we need to build one South Africa, we need to unite our people, and there is, the country is for all of us. I very quickly, and I mean in a matter of months, realized that he's absolutely sincere about that, because you expect that kind of thing to be a facade, or at least it's propaganda and it's a party line that he's trotting out. But he didn't. He lived it, and I bought into that philosophy of his hook, line, and sinker. I'm not ashamed to say it now that I didn't believe a word he said in 1990, but coming to serve him in 94, it took a matter of 2 or 3 months for me to say, okay, at the very least, I'm prepared to give this man a chance.
You can't fake
because
authenticity.
You can't fake that. Facade, you can't put facade and Mandela in the same sentence. And I'm often asked, and I'm sorry if I'm going off at a tangent, but people often ask me what he was like. And the greatest compliment I think that I can pay, and the easiest way to describe him, is to say to you that how you perceive him, you've met him twice, if you've never met Mandela, how you perceive him off a 42-inch TV screen, that's exactly how he is. Because he had this very rare quality of treating every person that he interacted with the same, whether he was speaking to another head of state, or the gardener, or his family, or to us as his bodyguard. He treated everybody the same, and that is so rare, not even mentioning how rare it is amongst politicians, but rare of any leader to be so utterly consistent in treating people exactly the same.
Very rare of any human being.
Any human being, you're right. Yeah.
Too many chameleons around who
change
for the circumstance.
And they just, they hunt with their hares and run with their hounds, or the other way around. I've probably got the cliche the wrong way around.
But he's clearly influenced your life, given the way that your eyes
very
opened.
Profoundly. Yeah.
You still live in South Africa?
Yes, I live in South Africa, and I'm going nowhere. And I took a decision sometime during those 5 years that the things that I learned from him, and there were many, and we can talk about those when I get down to the Berg. But I've tried to. So I have 3 boys, and I've tried to teach that kind of those values that I learned from him to my sons, and I try and put them into practice every day. I probably fail every day, but there's so much that we can learn from him. Just the statement he made, and I paraphrase it, where he said, "It's so much better to sit down with your enemy and talk to him than to fight." I mean, that is a life lesson, and as a value and as a principle, can save this world. So much heartache, so many human lives, so much death, so much conflict, just by listening to a simple yet profound statement like that,
At BNC 2, so
yes.
the previous, we have 2 conferences a year. That was at the spring conference in September.
Yeah.
Rob Hersov had a very strong speech. And
yes.
one of the tenets that he brought out, he said, if Madiba were alive today, he would vote DA.
Yeah.
Do you think he would?
Well, I don't know. I don't know if he would. Let me say this: he was such a party man that I think probably not. But the principles, what Hersov was saying, the principles that he would have voted for were not visible in his own party by then. So I think Hersov was on the money. I only read the text of that speech. I didn't hear it, but I agreed with everything he said. Yeah.
If we now look at the rest of your life, and we're going to be talking about that in the Berg and the bits, I mean, there are many interesting things that would have happened during those 5 years with Madiba. But if you look into the future and the way that South Africa is going today, and we know this isn't what Nelson Mandela would have wanted, is it possible for us to recapture that Madiba magic?
Alec, I'm an optimist, and I will believe that till the day that I go to my grave. Because, and the only reason for that is that every single day we still see South Africans of every hue and color doing wonderful acts of kindness for and to one another. And I have to say that at some point that has got to, it's like that cliche about it only takes one flame flickering somewhere to push away darkness. And I think that there is more than enough of that kind of goodwill. And I don't say this looking through rose-colored spectacles, I just see it every single day. And I think that once we get a grip on the kind of chaos and mayhem that we've had to endure for the last 10 or 11 years, evidenced by what happened in in KZN and Gauteng in July last year. Once we get a grip on that, I think that we are going to be the country that everybody wants to invest in. And I'm not an economist. However, we need a change at the top. I'm not saying the president. I have a lot of respect for our president, but those immediately below him, I don't think are leaders that are going to take us there.
Bodyguard Rory Steyn, in an interview that we had a little while ago, said that South Africa is blessed by its people but cursed by its leaders. Well, I'm paraphrasing him.
Yeah. And
if our leaders could just perhaps go back and imagine they spent the 5 years that you did with Madiba.
But I mean, so did Cyril. President Ramaphosa, at the time that I served Madiba, was the general secretary of the ANC. So he didn't have a ministerial portfolio. He wasn't a VIP in the terms of what I, as a cop in the VIP protection unit, understood a VIP to be. So he went through that road, and let us never forget that it was he and Rolf Meyer that actually got us to where we are now, as a democratic society. And I don't know whether it's this whole thing of fighting with one hand tied behind his back because he's got such problems from within. But I believe if you look at these, even my fellow South African speeches, from the first one that he made up until this very last one, I have respect for his abilities. I don't have respect certainly not for the Coronavirus Command Council and some of the decision making that comes out of there. I mean, look at the current situation where we are now, Alec. So they've sent all school kids back to school, and they've done away with many or most of the COVID protocols there. And yet you can't put more than 2,000 people into a sports venue. Now, how does that compute? Where is the thinking when that's an open-air environment and a classroom is not? But you're saying only 2,000. Where does a random number like 2,000 come from?
There've definitely been lots of mixed messages that have come through. But maybe just to close off with, so you would have seen a lot of Cyril as well during those 5 years. Do you think he's for real? In other words, when he stands up and he says things that he intends doing, is he saying it again in an authentic manner, or is he just towing a PR spin?
I think there's a bit of both. I like to believe that he is an authentic leader and a good president. I think that he has to pacify or play towards certain factions, in order to keep his power base. And I'm not a politician, So I don't know even whether that statement is accurate. I'm merely going on the evidence of my eyes. So what I see is a man, who has the wherewithal, is probably the right guy for the moment, but just severely hamstrung by those below him, and also all of this party infighting. And I'm not a politician, so I can't predict where it's going to go. But I would like to see him survive into a second term. But then we need a proper clean out, and we need to get competence back, and we need to get business involved. I do think that the solution for the country lies with proper government and private sector partnerships. I want to tell you one really cool story, though, and this is an absolutely true story, Alec. You remember that there was a parliamentary determined deadline by which time the Constitution had to have been ratified. And as we know, Cyril and Rolf were the two that burned the midnight oil to kind of get this document over the line. And so let's say that it was the deadline expired on a Sunday night, and on Monday morning in Parliament had to ratify the South African Constitution, not the interim one, the actual one, because this is about 96 I'm talking about. So now Madiba calls the whole shooting match to Mahlamandlovu, which is the official residence in Pretoria, his official residence, where he didn't stay, but every other president does. And there's this long dining room table, beautiful old wooden table, and he puts the ANC delegation down the one side, the Nats down the other side, and he says, "No, right now we're not leaving here until we've knocked this thing out, because the deadline expires at midnight." So it's a Sunday afternoon. It's very boring for us because we've driven up the highway from Houghton, where he lived, and this negotiation is going on, and we're just waiting for it all to end so we can take him back and go home to our families. So I'm sitting outside this dining room, inside the official residence, when the doors of the dining room fly open, and out comes Cyril. So I get up, and I didn't know him by any other term as chief, because that's what my ANC colleagues called him, because he was the general secretary of the ANC. As I said, he didn't have a formal government position. So I got up and I said, "Chief, can I help you? Is there something you need?" He said, "Yes. Where's the nearest TV?" I said, "Well, it's down the hall. Why do you need the nearest TV?" He says, "I just want to know who's leading the Grand Prix." And that's a true story.